Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf. I was planning on doing a completely different video today on Sunday, but then yesterday I watched Steve Donahue's channel, a video from him, and as so often happens, some of what he said got me thinking. So I decided to make a discussion video, which I don't do often, but sometimes I feel that I just want to vent or at least put my 2 cents in. So that's what I'm going to do today. I will leave a link to Steve's video down below, of course, but I should probably start by telling you what the discussion is about. Huh? That's probably a good start. Yeah, it's a good start. So anyway, Steve talked about an article written by Lionel Shriver in the Spectator this weekend. Lionel Shriver is an American author based in the UK, and if you're following my channel for any length of time, you know how much I love her work. And what I especially love is that she has the ability to, get an edge into discussions, and she's not afraid of being controversial. And she did that in the Spectator article. Again, I will leave a link to that article as well. You have to register, but that's like, 10 seconds and you can read the whole article. Anyway, so Lionel Shriver came across an email sent by Penguin Random House. In that email sent to agents, Penguin announced that they have a new company-wide goal, and they want to reflect the UK diversity in their selection of authors and employees. And they want to achieve that by 2025. And in the email, which you will, it's quoted in the article, they say we want to reflect the diversity gender-wise, but also sexuality-wise, mobility, disability. So all kinds of different boxes they want to tick, to say it a bit, casual, and they want to achieve that by 2025. There's a whole questionnaire that follows in that email from Penguin, in which you can, as an author, tick certain boxes, whether regarding your sexuality, whether regarding your ethnicity. And Lionel Shriver's piece is her conclusion that publishers, or at least Penguin, with this goal has forsaken quality and just is, as she quotes, as she says, drunk on virtue, and has forgotten that as a publisher they have the goal, and one goal only, to publish good books. Lionel Shriver's article didn't go unnoticed. She was trending on Twitter, and now you might say, well, that's a good thing if an author is trending on Twitter. But it was, of course, negative trending in the sense that people, called her all kinds of names, racist, Nazi, that she shouldn't work anymore, that we shouldn't buy her books anymore, stuff like that. And there are 2 things that I want to discuss here, and I'm interested in your opinion on both points. The first point I want to discuss with you is not so much anything to do with whether you agree with Lionel Shriver's statements or not, or whether you agree with the other side, but it's more that I find it disturbing how the discussions are carried out. And this is not the first one, and it won't be the last, and you can see that in politics especially all the time, that it's a shouting match. If you don't agree with what Lionel Shriver says, engage in an argument, engage in a debate. But what you have is you have one person accusing somebody of being stupid, you are a moron, and the other one shouting an accusation back, you are a racist. I think this is completely counterproductive, first of all, and in the whole shouting match, the real arguments and the real debate gets completely lost. And you can have a debate about that, because I think that Lionel Shriver, whose article obviously was also written in a way to provoke, and you should be able to see that it was, partly satirical, but also partly to provoke, But you can argue against it. I mean, I don't agree with her because I think her conclusion is not valid. It's not, if you look at the diversity, or if you look at spreading your author pool to reflect a more diverse system, that you then automatically forsake quality. It's like when the same discussion we have in feminism, when you have quotas for women, for instance, in the Fortune 500 on the boards, and they're all white men. And if you say, well, we want to have 50% women, and they have to do that, that doesn't mean that the quality goes down. It just means they have to do more effort, because they have to look outside of the old boys network and try to find women. And there are enough capable women, to stick with that example, out there who are able and capable of serving on a board. So you can really, I mean, you can take Lionel Shriver's argument and argue against it, but it doesn't lead anywhere if the only thing you do is just shout back. And just as much as I think Lionel Shriver is wrong, because the fact that you strive for diversity doesn't mean that the quality will go down, the argument on the other side is just as wrong, because when I look at, I will leave a link to some of the tweets down below, when I look at what people reacted is, they said Lionel Shriver claims black people can't write. That's not what she said. So you have this, building up shouting match, and which doesn't lead anywhere. So that is my main first point of how the discussion is carried out. And I'm wondering whether you have the same impression that I do, that we don't debate anymore with people who have viewpoints that we don't like, or that we find, abhorrent even. We don't engage in a debate anymore, but we just shout back. So I'm interested whether you agree with me that this is sort of a current theme. And just to add one more point to my previous point, an example, and I will leave a link to the BBC News article about this whole issue down below. One of the writers, Candice Carty-Williams, who just has... she worked for Random House, but she has a debut novel coming out, Queenie, for which she got a 6-figure advance. It was hyped all over. And if you look at her tweet after she was interviewed by BBC News, the thing she complained about was that they didn't use all the spicy bits. For instance, when she said, why doesn't Lionel Shriver stay in her lane? So her reaction is, damn it, I didn't win the shouting match because they didn't include my most spicy pieces of shout in the debate. And I think that's typical. That's really typical. But anyway, enough of the first point. The second point, I think, is also very interesting, because that's the question whether Lionel Shriver has a point. First of all, is there maybe a possibility or a risk that if a publisher only looks, or if a publisher is really focused on that goal to achieve diversity in its author, do they lose quality, or do they lose the sight for quality? Well, I argued against it already, but I can also understand that people might have arguments for that fear, that they think, well, if that is all a publisher does, where's the quality? And I think we saw this kind of, jumping onto a bandwagon before, which not always enhances quality. If you remember, the hype around the Millennium Trilogy, and that all of a sudden all the publishing houses wanted, they were afraid that they missed that train, and they were, grabbing authors who sort of are the new Millennium Trilogy, or you have that this is the new Gone Girl. So there is always, not only with this issue, I might add and stress, but there's always this possibility if a publishing house doesn't want to miss and hype, that quality gets sort of second. So we don't want that, obviously. But for me, more importantly, is the other question whether a publishing house at all should look at diversity in their authors. I'm not talking about employees. That's a completely different ballgame, and I'm not talking about that. But authors. And I disagree with Lionel Shriver in the sense that I think it's too easy to say publisher should only look for good books. That's obvious. That's like an open door. Of course, they have a duty to publish good books. Full stop. But we can only read the books as a reader when they are published. And I think in that sense, a publishing house has much more political, quote-unquote, power than Lionel Shriver gives them credit for. And I think publishers should try and look at their portfolio and see whether they maybe lean too much on the dead white guys and might want to change something and might want to put more effort, for instance, into publishing women or into publishing authors from a minority background. First of all, which categories do we include in this diversification? Is it an issue that a publisher doesn't have any red-haired author? Everybody would say no, of course not. Is it an issue that a publishing house doesn't publish poetry from a disabled author? I don't know. Is that important? That if you look at their poetry selection, that there are, authors in there who have a disability? Or is it more important that they have books that are dealing with this issue? So I think it's the Penguin Random House goal is sort of murky, because I don't believe that a publishing house, when you look at their authors, should be a percentage-wise reflection of the way a society is made up. I don't think that is a valid goal at all. I think you have to have a combination of, we should not only publish dead white guys, we should also publish women and people, authors from a minority background. But it's also important that we have works dealing with these issues. But I don't know. I find the second question much more difficult to answer. So I'm asking you, what do you think? Should a publishing house actively look for diverse authors? In other words, should they have the goal that they not only publish dead white guys, but also women and people from a minority background? And again, not forsaking quality if they do that. They should look for good books. And the second question here is, what categories then are important for us when we look at a publishing house? And I don't have an answer to that second question, as you might have gathered from my sort of rambling, waffling thoughts on that point. So I'm interested what you think. Is it really important that the books that are published are an exact reflection, author-wise, of the population, of the diversification of the population? I don't know. So, and if I don't know, I'm asking you. But anyway, these were my kind of rambly thoughts, spurred by Steve, as it so often is, like I said in the beginning. And I thank you very, very much for watching. If you made it to the end, let me know your thoughts on it, and let's discuss and not shout. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you very much. Have a good Sunday, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.